endeavored to maintain a modicum of fairness and impartiality while discussing the ceaseless saga of royal feuding between the Duchesses of Sussex and Cambridge. Despite her fellow View co-hosts' frequent descents into frothing partisan invective against the self-exiled Meghan Markle, the legendary comedienne fought to uphold at least a veneer of objectivity. That delicate balance of pragmatic equanimity came crashing down in spectacular fashion after Goldberg's latest mild chastisement of Markle's incessant publicity antic transcended the previously accepted boundaries of civil reproach. It had started out innocuously enough when photos surfaced of Kate Middleton frolicking playfully on a Caribbean beach with her 3 children during the Cambridge clan's family vacation. The light-hearted images depicted an elegantly radiant Duchess expertly balancing parental doting with the sporadic requirement to strike the world-class smile and regal poise for which she'd become renowned. In commenting upon the pictures for her nationally televised Hot Topics segment, Goldberg charitably characterized the former Duchess of Sussex in remarkably generous terms. "Say what you will about Kate, but she really does seem like a naturally wonderful mom totally committed to family. Those pics are a powerful reminder of why she continues resonating so positively." The judicious praise stood out as a relative olive branch towards the often vilified Waleses compared to her co-hosts' accompanying diatribes accusing them of staging the beach frolic as an orchestrated public relations sop. Yet the momentary lapse of prudent neutrality would ultimately ignite a firestorm of retaliation from a profoundly incensed Meghan herself. Within hours of the View segment airing, Goldberg's personal phone records indicate a barrage of 27 consecutive unhinged voicemail rants being logged from the Duchess's outgoing line between 3 and 4 a.m. Pacific Time. While the first few messages simply radiated bemused disappointment at her apparent betrayal, the diatribes steadily became consumed by volcanic anger and paranoid persecution complexes at the perceived injustice she'd endured. "I thought you were one of the precious few real ones actually willing to defend me against this ancestral coven of racist harpies hellbent on destruction," Meghan seethes in a quivering alto thick with escalating rage during the 7th message. "But it seems like as soon as one of those brainwashed Stassi Barbie dolls can twirl her intergenerational ringlets and flash those spooky Aryan eye vaginas, you stands virtually abdicate your what's left of your dignity to get on your knees and worship the ground they walk on like the rest of the blue blood cult workers." As the 4-minute-long rant hastily deteriorated into surreal denigrations of the Cambridge children as butt-chugging Greenwich Satan Cedars, and calls for the Los Angeles FBI field office to initiate a full domestic extremism investigation into Kate's immediate family tree in Norfolk, Goldberg could only sit in silent bewilderment replaying the unhinged tantrums. 2 subsequent messages eclipsed even this barely lucid tirade with transcendent states of vengeful fury and racially charged calumnies that would have shocked even the most jaded Hollywood hellraisers. Multiple extended remonstrations about the perfidious psychogenocides of white privilege and Anglo-cultural assimilationism induced rambling soliloquies culminating in Meghan's ragged, guttural moan that not even Marcy-trained operatives at The Hague could dredge up the boundless BDSM darkness that deserves befalling those pasty-pink descendants of ritual skullmuggers. In the dozens of increasingly histrionic and warped diatribes stretching into the pre-dawn hours, a new and terrifying portrait of the disgraced Duchess's fragile psyche gradually materialized. With every escalating cry about ancestral blood curses and the subhuman status of all royal stains, Markle's mask of performative victimhood slipped further into an abyss of homicidal ideation so sociopathically primal as to predate basic human consciousness itself. Yet as gruesome and depraved as this schizophrenic mental nadir appeared from the vantage point of Goldberg's voicemail recordings, it quickly became evident the vitriol had already metastasized into outright threats at the slightest provocation. Whereas her spree of voicemails had largely favored Whoopi herself with thinly veiled insinuations of karmic vengeance for daring to deviate from her persona non grata personas, the campaign of retaliatory terror extended far beyond these relatively tame threats. A torrent of texts, emails, and even conventional mail materialized from burner accounts and idiosyncratic couriers, all unified by 2 central themes. First and foremost, virtually every harassing dispatch contained some derivation of the word trauma, in conjuring gruesome depictions of sustained horrific visions to be inflicted upon Goldberg's loved ones and career. Grotesquely barbaric and overtly racialized scenarios ran the gamut from ruthless sexual violation and wide-scale torture to outright genocidal diktats for eradicating the lamentable stains of Whoopi's genetic transgression. These alarmingly meticulous expositions of cruelty and depravity were frequently juxtaposed against comparatively banal regurgitations of her professional work and philanthropic initiatives. Multiple FedExed padded envelopes containing pages upon pages of soldered-on internet missives and paparazzi shots memorialized these threats against a distinctly menacing backdrop of achievement in projects condemning racial injustice and artistic/cultural celebration. Secondly, the unifying synthetic signature across all instances of threats and vitriol suggested the unmistakable specter of the Duchess herself as the coordinating mastermind behind this sweeping gauntlet of psychological terrorism. From the familiar cadences and verbiage of her speech patterns and racialist syntax to minutiae like timestamps corresponding to her known circadian rhythms, Whoopi and her personal staff were left with little uncertainty as to her ultimate complicity. Yet even as the torrent of justifiably horrifying content drowned Goldberg's communications portals in waves of violently charged trigger impacts and microaggressions, the hardest kill shots remained chillingly reserved for the cruelest verbal barbs of all. We're going to have to start by completely eviscerating your entire sense of humanity from the core out, until you literally awaken to feel safer and more comforted by suicide than another sunrise on this asteroidal prism of lived genocides, Meghan's unmistakable voice glacially issued forth in what an attached translation confirmed to be Swahili ode from brutal Belgian colonial oppression. You'll not only watch every treasured component of your livelihood stripped down to the sputtering final synapses as we proceed to expunge any memory of significance or self-reverence, but we will desecrate and liquefy every fiber of your so-called legacy until your profound purgatorial indignities become immortal truths so penetrating and boundless that the very essences of your ancestral homeland's outermost borders and continents recoil in palpable nausea from the eternal torment you incurred. They will teach generation after generation after generation henceforth of how your tragic colonial ontogenesis merited the annihilation of your spiritual imprint. A case could be made the sanity-fraying conflation of calculated terrorism mingling seamlessly with wounded pride elevated the interminable Whoopi Goldberg menace as a dire benchmark of America's racial discourse descending into an almost supernaturally militarized fever pitch. What emerged was a terrifying self-perpetuating hate spiral of paranoia, vitriol and eventually mortal threats, with the fallen Duchess of Sussex driving the psychological battering ram from one ripening human vulnerability to another. Even as Markle's unhinged haranguing cyclically returned to ludicrously impassioned scathing over such trivial fleeting slights as body-shaming the Wales's welfare over that effervescent beach wardrobe, she invariably toggled to invoking involuntary extinction upon Whoopi's cultural identity above all others. The coming of our times will not simply gestate a merely temporal disfiguration of genetic trauma unto your ultimately Semitic heritage, Meghan ominously intoned in an electronically distorted drawl at certain points. But will force your hellishly untethered lineages to metamorphose at the root codal level, into terminal